Good morning and welcome to round two, Microsoft Ignite's Ask the Expert. So for the next half hour, we're going to be talking about Project Cortex, knowledge discovery and content intelligence in Microsoft 365. As you may have seen, hopefully you have heard, we had a broad range of exciting announcements about our first product coming out of Project Cortex, SharePoint Syntax, which will reach general availability on October 1st. We're also here to take your questions about the rest of Project Cortex, everything that we're doing to bring topics and knowledge to you throughout the applications of Microsoft 365. I'm joined on the call today by Naomi, who leads program management and engineering for Project Cortex, as well as Sean Squires, who's a principal program manager on the Cortex team. He's responsible for syntax and document understanding and taxonomy, and so we hope we have the right folks to be able to answer your questions. If we can't answer one of your questions, I do want to point you to some of the resources that we've been sharing throughout the week. Our resource center for syntax is listed first, along with our resources in Project Cortex as well. Some of the details on what we've shown and what we announced are also linked here. I just wanted to call something out based on our prior Ask the Experts, and in fact, just about every time we do one of these sessions, we can't get to all the questions. So if you have a question that we don't answer, please try to reach out to us. I believe there's one more Ask the Expert session happening later this week. If you go to the Cortex or Syntax resource center, our office hours calls, that's a monthly series that we have that's open to the public that covers a range of topics, but the most important part of it is it's a real AMA. It's a real open place for anyone to be able to bring questions. So we want to provide lots of chances for you to be able to get your questions answered. Just a reminder that as part of Microsoft Ignite, today's session is being governed by our code of conduct. We want to make sure that this is a safe and welcoming environment for all. And that said, let's turn our attention to the questions. Lots of questions coming in. Let's pick one off fairly easily. This one is coming from Anonymous, and I think, Sean, this has your fingers all over it. Will a document or form added by an unlicensed user be processed by Syntax?
Good question. Yeah, so hi everyone. Good morning. Yeah, so with the document understanding models or even the form processing models, we require a license to create those models, whether they be in the content center or through the AI Builder service on Power Platform. But then once those models are applied to a library, yes, the contents that are created or uploaded there will be processed by those applied models. Anything else you want to add around the licensing piece? There's a lot of questions come around the licensing flavor and just what the scope of the licenses are required there. So maybe we should address some of those other salient points up front.
Yeah, so it's our intent. We are pricing Syntax to encourage broad adoption. Yes. It requires a license to be able to access a content center, and since that's where your models as well as your processed content live, you're going to need a license to be able to get into that. So this isn't Syntax is not a creator's license. It's not. We're not taking a model of it costs. It's not $50,000 a month for a single user who builds models and everyone else comes free. It's a broadly distributed licensing model. Okay, lots of questions coming in. I'm going to save some of these for the end. This is an interesting one. So this question is coming from Ernesto, and he notes, Cortex has been a challenge to sell the setup and governance to security and identity teams. With Syntax and the Cortex framework, we have different M365 services and owners interacting together. What playbook or moves have we found that we'd recommend to keep Cortex moving forward to get to internal approvals? Naomi, I think this one's probably for you.
Why, thank you, Chris. And thank you, Ernesto, for your great question. So yeah, a couple of different things here to talk through. So from a product perspective, SharePoint Syntax uses the permissions, the policies, all of the good stuff that you have applied to your documents already. So if you have a records label, for example, the retention label is part of that. If you have a sensitivity policy or label, we'll be supporting that as well. And then our lovely colleagues over in the Microsoft Information Protection Center. So those folks are able to use things like trainable classifiers. You can put the place where you actually define the sensitivity labels and policies as part of that. And they have lots of great tools as part of the Microsoft Information Protection piece. So from a product perspective, these two products, SharePoint Syntax and the Microsoft Information Protection area, work extremely hand in hand, right? So we think it's incredibly important. Sean actually has a great session that shows you a little bit about that and actually shows you a records retention label being applied and used as part of your SharePoint Syntax model. So all of that goodness is there. Now, with security and compliance folks, when it comes to the actual people and human beings that we have to deal with, and we think about the culture there, one of the things is really to be able to demonstrate that SharePoint Syntax uses the same trust principles that we have inside of Microsoft 365. And so it's incredibly important to realize that we use the same things, right? Same things that are happening in Microsoft 365. So if you've got permissions, if you've got retention labels, if you've got any kind of policies applying to those documents, SharePoint Syntax uses those already. So from a cultural perspective, making sure that security and compliance folks are aware that you've got the same basics there. If they apply an information protection policy to your tenant and your organization, if you mark something confidential or highly confidential or whatever terms you use inside of your organization, it will always, always, always be respected. There's nothing that we're doing there. What we're trying to do is make it easier for end users, so the folks who are using SharePoint Syntax, to be able to build a model so that they can actually extract what they need out of there and be able to do their JDoBs faster, while still, of course, making sure that security and compliance is respected. So instead of people doing all kinds of background things to process the information in the way that they need, we're trying to make it a legitimate part of everything that you're doing inside of SharePoint and in Microsoft 365. So great question, Ernesto. Thank you.
Terrific. Here's the one I just saw that I wanted to mention. So another question from Anonymous. Anonymous is being very busy today.
Good morning, Anonymous.
So Sean, she or he asks, how deep will graph integration be, and can all operations be done using APIs? I wonder if you can kind of comment on our strategy there.
Yeah, that's a great question, Anonymous. Deep integration, we're very much reliant and leveraging our investments in the graph, even with Syntax and other Project Cortex work that we have planned for you guys in the future. Even with things like our investments, our continued investments, I should say, in the managed metadata service. So we'll continue to invest there. We'll continue to leverage that and also allow you to leverage that. We'll have some initial APIs available for you to facilitate the applying of created and trained models across your tenant. And we'll continue to build on those APIs as we move forward and provide more capability to you.
Terrific. The next question comes from Peter, and I think this is aimed at you, Ms. Moneypenny. Based on the roadmap slide that we showed yesterday and today and tomorrow, do they understand?
Luckily, it's the same roadmap over the last 3 days. That works well. Nothing has changed on the roadmap in the last 3 days. It's good.
So the roadmap slide reads to Peter that since knowledge is outside of SharePoint Syntax, that it's just coming automatically into big SharePoint itself without extra licensing. Can you kind of comment a little on
sure. Okay.
What our rollout plans are?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So thanks so much, Peter. So if I have given that impression, I apologize because I'm erroneous in that. So when we talk about Project Cortex and the first offering that we have, which is SharePoint Syntax, That is obviously that's an additional license fee, unfortunately, on top of what we already have inside of Microsoft 365. Now, the same is true on the topics experiences piece. So the knowledge and how we're figuring out what topics are auto-discovered essentially inside of your organization. Behind the scenes, we have to do a huge amount of AI processing, and it would be really, really hard to include that just within Microsoft 365. And so the topics and knowledge piece of it will be an additional user charge as well on top of it. Sorry. But totally worth it. Just going to say that. Totally worth it.
Understood. And I just got 12 more questions.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
I'll try and start answering some. I just saw one from Colin. I don't know if you were eyeing that one, Chris.
I can't scroll fast enough.
Right. Here's another one from Anonymous. With a content center, is this a specific site collection template? And what's the best way to make sure that all of the documents in a tenant get processed? It's an interesting one.
Yeah, I'll take that one. It's a good question, Anonymous. So a couple of things. The content center is a new site template. The purpose of the content center is to enable the building and training and management actually of these document understanding models. So the content center though itself is an administrative template, so it's not available through self-service site creation, but you create one by default when you configure Syntex, but then you can create additional ones. So if you have plans to, let's say in your organization, you want to separate the contents and the models associated with them by department or organization, that would be an option. Think of it as sort of like the hub IA model that we've been espousing over the last couple of years. But for many, a single content center might be adequate or more than sufficient for your needs. The models themselves, while they get created there, you can deploy these models across your tenant. So the models can go to where the content is. It's not required that you move all of your contents into the content center. But currently with this release, the content does need to be in SharePoint. We have a great connector story, and we'll continue to evolve that so that we can extend Syntex's capabilities to where your content is. But currently, the model, you can put content in the content center and manage it there, or you can deploy the models to where the content is in your tenant.
Terrific. Next question, I think, is a great one for you, Naomi. It's from Frederic. It may be the Frederic that we know. Does Syntex work with content in other languages, or when will that be added? Can we talk a little about our language plan?
Yes, good, great question. So yes, we are definitely working on supporting multiple languages. Our goal eventually is to support all of the languages that we have in Microsoft 365. So that's definitely our goal. So right now with SharePoint Syntex, the models that we have, they are English only. So for this first release, but we are working very, very hard on those areas. The way it's kind of going to roll out is really, we have a lot of dependency, obviously, on our colleagues that are in Azure and Microsoft Research and all the other great places that we're getting technology from. And so I think Latin supported languages first, so Latin-based alphabets first, and then it will continue to roll out into the other languages as well. So we think, Spanish, I want to say German, French, something like that. Those are the ones that will come earlier rather than later. So, hope that helps.
Terrific. Well, here's a question I'll pick off, though I'm officially not an expert today. Is Syntex an add-on for E5 customers as well? Yes. So you can add Syntex to just about any Microsoft 365 license. It's not limited to just E3 users. So definitely want to see as many customers able to take advantage of the benefits from this. Gregorio from Argentina has a question about libraries that are residing inside of Syntex. How should we think about managing content that may be resident in pre-existing SharePoint-based libraries? I think, Sean, that would be a good one for you.
I like that question, and I think it's a great question. We absolutely understand you guys aren't coming to adopt Syntex and saying, hey, great, I have a brand new SharePoint environment. Let me get started. We wanted to make sure that you could leverage the capabilities that we're providing to you with your existing contents. So when you take one of those document understanding models that you're building in the content center, you could deploy it to a library. And from that point forward, the trigger of newly created or uploaded files will get processed by that model. But you can also select one or more of existing files in that library, and will provide a new action in the library ribbon that will allow you to essentially queue those documents to say, go run these through the model or models that I've applied to this library. So we're giving you an ability to run your models on existing contents in your libraries.
Terrific. So every time we do an office hours or an Ask the Experts or an AMA, data residency always comes up, as you know, Naomi. So is the data being processed by Syntex staying within the same tenant or region? Can you kind of talk about how that works?
Sure, I'll be happy to. So yes, it's always a question that comes up, as Chris mentioned. So for us, there's a couple of different things there. So data residency really is about understanding what Microsoft 365 is doing with your information. Again, because SharePoint Syntex is built on top of Microsoft 365, the existing permissions, things where your data is being resident, where your data is being processed, all of that is governed by what we do with Microsoft 365. We take it incredibly seriously. So if your information is living in a specific tenancy, say you're in Canada, for example, and you have sovereign residency there, if you're somewhere, if you're in Europe or if you're in Australia or wherever it is, right? One of those, wherever your data is living is where it is getting processed. We don't send it all back to North America or anything like that for that processing. So that processing actually lives right where your data lives as well. So it's incredibly important for us to make sure that you understand the same principles that we have for Microsoft 365, the trust policies, residency, compliance, everything else, all is the same way as your content already works. So that's one of the amazing benefits of being able to build on top of Microsoft 365 and SharePoint.
So Anonymous, who is our MVP today, has a question. Sean, I think you're starting to pick this up, but maybe if you can comment on this one so folks who aren't watching the chat can hear it. Are statistics and analytics for the use of taxonomy still on the roadmap?
Absolutely. Great question, Anonymous. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Sean. Do it. And yes, and there's a great
The short
session.
answer is yes, as Naomi and I just said yes. We, in our investment in managed metadata service, which many of you have seen, we've already started rolling out a number of updates, modernizing the administrative experience in the term store, the content type gallery, end user experiences with managed metadata columns. We analytics are very much a part of those investments and a part of Project Cortex and Syntex in particular. So we will be rolling out an initial set of composition analytics that help you understand your term sets and where they're being used in your tenant. We'll be extending that so we can provide more insights for you in the future. And we will also be adding analytics to your enterprise content types as we continue to invest in those. And just to sort of make a plug, we are very keen to take advantage and allow you to take advantage of a lot of your existing investments. So a lot of the models that we're talking about today use content types. And so we very much want to make sure that we're providing you analytics to understand how these are being used and where in your organization.
Okay. Lots of questions coming in, and we've been talking a lot about Syntex. Let's talk about the rest of Cortex a little bit and what we're doing with topics. The question comes from Ben Hope at the FDA. Is Cortex being positioned as an enterprise knowledge management system? And will it handle external systems mining like research publication, GRCID, Microsoft Academic, etc.?
Ooh, great question. Thank you, Ben. That's a good one. So yes, one of the things that we talked through a little bit with the session earlier, and maybe you've seen the replays. If you haven't, there's that session. There's also a bunch of sessions that our colleague CJ Tan has done that actually helps to explain a little bit about what we're doing behind the scenes. So yes, Project Cortex, the knowledge aspect of this is incredibly important. So yes, we are a knowledge system. It is enterprise-wide, organization-wide, I should say. And so when you think about your organization, there's lots of ways to bring in content. So one of the areas, for example, where Microsoft 365 is being used. So this is the graph connectors that you heard us talk about earlier. So Microsoft Search has graph connectors that can help you to bring in information for lots of different sources. So those sources can include other applications, but they could also include anything basically that is able to have a webhook essentially and bring that into the Microsoft Graph. Once you brought that content into the Microsoft Graph, then Cortex can actually operate over it. So things like discovery of topics is one of those areas where if you've got external systems, you want to bring those in, meld it together with all the goodness that you have inside of your organization, you will be able to do that as well. So it really is a call in this case, I think, for making sure that you can do knowledge sharing on a broad scale across your organization, and then that you're able to use the subject matter experts inside of your company to basically work on the stuff that's really important. So, 70% of the work we would hope is done by AI, going across the information that's in your organization and all of the connected information that you have as part of that, and then additional capabilities for subject matter experts to curate that knowledge as well.
Great. Here's a question that sort of got truncated on its way over into the publishing queue, but I remember what was originally said. So Andre Polito said, I'm not a developer, but on the back side of Cortex, what's doing the actual processing and orchestration? Is it Power Automate? Is it SharePoint workflows? Is it something else? Sean, can you kind of comment on some of the orchestration tools that are being used, also with ways that people can extend them?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, Andre. So we're actually, in this release, we're providing you with two different types of models that are using a variety of technologies that we've developed internally at Microsoft. And so with the document understanding models that you're creating in Content Center, those are managed and built and managed natively in SharePoint. And those are using our service from the back end that does all the other document processing. So, when you upload documents and generate thumbnails and things like that, this is like a service that's attached to that. And so it uses that for the processing, and as well as then obviously we have the mechanism to deploy these models across your tenant to other libraries. And so that's where that orchestration is happening. With the form processing models that you're building in the AI Builder service of Power Platform, what happens is when you publish that model, we actually create a Power Automate flow that references that model, applies it to the library. And so at the time, we're using Power Automate as the orchestration mechanism to do the processing of that model on files that are created or uploaded to the associated library.
Okay. Canon asks, can syntax process pages created by users in the Site Pages library? That's an interesting one.
That is a great question. Not yet. It's the short answer. Very much something on the roadmap. We're looking at that. The trick there, just not to get too geeky, but it's we want to make sure that when you're building and training the model and even using it at runtime, that we're getting just the text on the canvas. And so we're working with our publishing partners to make sure that we give you a great experience there. But definitely see the value in being able to run models against SharePoint pages and hope to provide that for you in the future.
So Lalit has a question here. I work for Legion PLC. My company is looking for Project Cortex implementation help. Could you please share with me where we can get started? I'll take this one. We have a very vibrant partner community, the Content Services Partner Program. We announced yesterday our first wave of 17 preferred partners who have all been badged and skilled on this. All the details are available in our announcement link, which I posted into the chat, and any of them can help you get started in planning and implementation.
We also have a great session as well. Just wanted to mention that too. So in addition to that partner help, there is a great session this week that's in the virtual hub, which I'm sure is linked into one of these syntax resources here that helps you just understand some of the adoption that we've learned from our private preview customers.
So Mario is asking us, the syntax GA is October 1st. Can customers begin to use the product in their tenant on that date, or is there a phased rollout that will start in the US and go on from there? Great question, Mario. Who wants to take that one?
Sure. So it will be generally available for licensed users on that date. So that's the cool thing here is if you do have the licenses, maybe if you've been in our preview and you're extending into general availability, you'll be able to use it, and then you'll be able to have access to all of that great richness. And then for folks who don't have licenses currently, as soon as those licenses are available, I know we've got some follow-up to do on October 1st. Then as soon as folks are licensed, then they'll be able to use those capabilities.
Okay, we're getting into the home stretch here. I know we only have 5 minutes, so
Oh no!
please be patient with us. The questions are just coming through.
Great
Sophie
questions,
asks,
everyone.
does syntax still require specific content types and columns to be set up? In Teams, there's a general document library with a folder for each channel, or is syntax able to identify content and apply retention labels without using content types? It's an interesting one. Sean, do you want to comment on that?
Sure. Yeah, great question. I'm trying to think of what's the best way to answer that. Let me start at the top of the question and I'll get to the bottom of the question. Let's see. So you asked about do you need to set up the content types? No, we actually do that for you when you're building the model. So whether you're building a form processing model using the AI Builder service or building a document understanding model in the Content Center, creating that model is actually creating the content type, and then the columns that you want to extract, there's your content type schema. When you apply those models to the library, we actually will set up the content type, set up the columns, set up the view, and do all the appropriate mapping for the model to operate correctly at runtime. As far as building models without a content type, no, we currently use that infrastructure because we want you to enable you to take advantage of what we believe is a very powerful object in the content management system of SharePoint, and also leverage your existing investments.
So Patrick is asking a question. Azure has several cognitive services such as text analytics that I don't see integrating with SharePoint currently. Will Cortex provide integrations to those services?
Sorry, I'm trying to get to the question. Could you repeat that? I'm sorry, Chris.
So Azure has lots of cognitive services.
Yes.
Some of which we've already integrated in. But there's other ones that don't have easy integrations to SharePoint today. Just kind of thinking about our philosophy about taking some of those best of breed Azure cognitive services and integrating them across syntax.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Patrick. Good question. So, yeah, we absolutely have plans to expand, as Chris mentioned, the best of breed and models that are appropriate for the content that you're storing in SharePoint, and bring those to you through syntax and the rest of Project Cortex. We started with form processing models, for example, but as many of you may be aware, AI Builder has a number of other pre-built and custom model frameworks that you could use. And so we're definitely continuing to work with them and figure out which ones are the best ones to bring into the system based on, what we can do and what you guys need. And so that will continue. And we're looking across with our partners to bring more of these models to you into the system in the future. Absolutely. Text analytics being one of them. Yes.
Awesome. A lot of questions coming in. Let me just get scrolling to the bottom. We only have a few minutes. So Adnan has a question. Will syntax be available in demo tenants for partners, those immersion experiences? Yes, syntax will become available in those demo tenants early in the next quarter is what I've been told. There's a related question. I can't publish it because I can't find it right now about developer licensing. So at GA, we are not planning on creating a developer license for Cortex and syntax yet, but that's something we definitely are studying. And if the demand is sufficient there, of course, we'll create one of those licenses. Mario's asking, can you use an existing content type instead of creating a new one? I already have a contract content type, and I just want to use syntax to enhance the data. Sean.
Yes, the short answer is yes. And in fact, I realized now that I'm seeing Sophie's question, I want to use this opportunity to kind of elaborate on that. Not only can you use your existing content types, we also are providing support for managed metadata fields. So if you already have a managed metadata site column, you can even build an extractor on that. So when your model extracts information from files, you can match it against your term set and then ensure that the right term set value preferred label gets written into your SharePoint field. So again, allowing you to take advantage of those previous investments. And Sophie, you were asking about, I misunderstood the second part of your question about applying retention label without content types. No, we use the content type as sort of the vehicle for the model to do the classification. But one thing I did want to reiterate, because compliance is very important to us, and as Naomi mentioned earlier, we're partnering very closely with our security and compliance folks on the information protection label platform. So you can actually set up a model to apply a retention label and eventually a sensitivity label that is predefined, pre-published, and then you can use that with the model. So at runtime, when the file gets classified, we can also apply that retention label. So very much, using all these different pieces that you've invested in and bringing them together.
So I am putting my actual, not virtual, hand up just to let folks know that we are at time. So this has been a really vibrant discussion. So many questions. We know that you have more. Please continue to reach out to us and contact us. We love answering questions. I want to thank our experts, Naomi and Sean, for making time early on a Pacific Northwest morning, and of course for each of you for joining us. We hope you are having a wonderful Microsoft Ignite, and we hope to be able to join you again in the future. Be well.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Yeah, thanks for the questions.